Right, it's 7 o'clock. Good evening, members, officers, members of the public, and people watching us at home. Can I request everybody to put their phones on silent, please? And members, please do not use them during the meeting. Right, and I welcome the new members on planning committee. I think there are 6 new members now. Okay. Right, item 1 is apologies for absence. Okay, there's nothing. Declaration of interest. Yep, Councillor Stout.
I've received emails on several of the items, but the one I just want to declare an interest in is item number 7, Park Road allotments. Even though it's not necessarily for decision tonight, I've predetermined on that as I've already registered to speak at the public inquiry.
Okay, thank you for that. Any more? Yeah, Councillor Lal.
Chair, representations on agenda items 4 and 5.
I think everybody has that. Don't you look? Yeah. I think we all had representation on item 4 and 5. Yeah. Councillor Sharma, yeah.
Just to give apologies for Councillor Bowring.
Okay. Yeah.
Chair.
Thank you. Yep. Councillor Luki.
Yeah, I've had something on item 4 and item 5. I called it in.
Yep.
I've had meetings arranged with the with case officers, and I've had meetings with the applicant as well, with the with my other 2 ward councillor colleagues.
Thank you.
Okay, and on Park Road, I did vote against it at the last airing here, and also I have registered to speak at the public inquiry, as I did at the first public inquiry back in 2017.
Okay, that's not here for decision anyway, so that's fine. Thank you. Okay, we all had representation of item 4 and 5. Yeah. Thank you. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on 4th of May. I'll take accuracy and methodizing together. And this is from pages 7 to 9. Anybody? Agreed? Can I sign that? Thank you. Right. Item 4. Item 4 was deferred last meeting. So normally I don't take the speakers on that, but because we have 6 new members on the team, I've accepted the speakers on that item. So if the officers can take the presentation first, please.
Good evening. So this is agenda item number 4, Manderson House. I just wanted to start with a quick verbal addendum. We've published the high-level feasibility study for the site to the south, which was submitted by the applicant and shared with the objector. Just to clarify, the assessment outlined in the officer report in no way relies on that feasibility study, which is why we have not given it material weight. We received legal advice that given the objector discusses it in their objection, it should be shared and published online. The objector, having reviewed it, has commented as follows. The scheme presented to us indicates a breach of planning policies. The issue has not been resolved at all and needs considerably further work. It confirms the sterilization of our site, and it confirms the need for comprehensive consideration of this and the adjacent plot. I'll now go to the presentation. Looking through. So just on the site and the surroundings, it's off of Commerce Road in Brentford. It is a strategic industrial site, and it's located to the west of Brentford Town Centre. To the east of the site is the Brentford Lock West development and 1 Commerce Road, which is 7 stories fronting Commerce Road. There's the disused railway embankment, which is a green strip to the immediate west of the application site. Well, though not finalized yet, there are plans to turn this into a park. Bridge House, which is the MOT site, is immediately to the south, and speakers representing that site to the south you will hear from shortly. There's a commercial building and mixed use, including some residential directly to the north, and the current site comprises 1 vacant office building and 2 vacant buildings used for car storage. The application that we're discussing is for the demolition of the existing office and warehouse buildings on site and the erection of one part 7-story, part 8-story building and one part 8-story, part 9-story building for both commercial use, 2,388 square meters of commercial floor space, and as well as residential, providing 111 flats, 30 of which would be affordable with associated works, 3 blue badge parking spaces. The application would also safeguard access to the future railway park along the north of the site. The ground floor would provide access and disabled parking, and the commercial space, which would also be provided at first floor. The upper floors include 2 residential blocks that wrap around communal amenity space. The site is, as mentioned, is vacant. The proposal would deliver an uplift in commercial floor space, 738 square meters compared to the existing site floor area, bringing a more appropriate use back into the strategic industrial site, as well as providing 111 homes, 30 of which, as I mentioned, are affordable homes. So just to move on to the application was deferred from May's planning committee to further discuss a few issues, which I'll just run through as quickly as possible. So firstly, to discuss London Plan Policy D3, which is the policy that relates to optimizing site capacity through the design-led approach, as well as the impact on the strategic industrial land and the agent of change principle. So while policy D3 doesn't explicitly reference neighboring sites, it does require the site context to be carefully considered. The proposed scheme is considered an appropriate response to the site context and changing character of the wider area. A rigorous noise assessment has been carried out, and the proposed mitigation measures would ensure that there would be no adverse impact on the ability of the sites within the strategic industrial site to function either as existing or based on future intensification of those uses. The proposal would therefore accord with London Plan Policy D3 in regards to optimizing site capacity, D13 in relation to the agent of change principle, E5 in relation to the strategic industrial site allocation. Just 2 other points to talk through. So it was deferred to discuss heights further in regards to the London Plan Policy. So the relevant London Plan Policy is D9. Arms A and B of that policy suggest a plan-led approach for tall buildings. However, case law clarifies that parts A and B are not preconditions to part C of that policy, which and it may be approved with no plan-led allocation for a tall building, which requires the visual impacts, functional impacts, environmental and cumulative impacts to be assessed in full. And a tall building is therefore considered acceptable based on the townscape assessment that has been carried out, as well as the high quality detailing proposed. There is a site section to the end of the presentation, just the second last, to go to that quickly here. So here you can see the wider sections that you can see the emerging heights in the area, including 7 stories directly to the east of the site off of Commerce Road, going up to 10 within the wider Brentford Lock development to the north. And the last item that was deferred against was to discuss the financial contribution of $3,000 towards the public space within the Field Lane estate. This has been discussed, however, the contribution would not meet the required legal tests that a Section 106 contribution is required to meet, in that it would not be directly related to the proposed scheme or related in scale and kind. However, the developer has agreed to pay £3,500 towards the future railway park to assist in its funding. Given its proximity, this is considered to meet the relevant legal tests required. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions and a legal agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Okay, questions for the officer? Anybody? Yep. Councillor Mitchell, yep.
Yeah, hi there. Just quickly, a material planning consideration. You mentioned adjacent sites, but not adjacent sites, but yes to properties. Can you just clarify, because it's a sticking point, I believe, what you mean by that? Thanks.
Yeah, so what we're saying is the feasibility study that the applicant carried out for the site to the south, we're not giving any material weight to because it's high level. We don't know if that scheme that they're showing would be policy compliant or acceptable. So therefore, we haven't given it any material weight in assessing this application. The site to the south, though, is a material consideration, which is outlined in the report.
Okay. Councillor Sidhu?
Thank you very much. Provision of 27% affordable housing. I think our policy is nearly 40. So why 13% less when we are building 111?
Yes, absolutely. So that's the target for affordable housing. However, the policy indicates that affordable housing needs to be the maximum reasonable within the viability context. We've had their open book viability assessment reviewed by our specialist, who has indicated that what they're proposing is indeed the maximum reasonable. So we couldn't push for more. But what I will say is throughout the course of assessment with housing colleagues, we have actually secured more of the larger affordable units, so 4-bed units, which is what we're in desperate need for. So the number has actually come down slightly based on what we need. And it's 27 by unit and 29% by habitable room.
Councillor Stroud?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Turning to a note that I know you've seen and was sent to all the committee members from one of the objectors or indeed their consultant. And I have to say that the language is rather strong because it does accuse you officers of misleading this committee, which I probably think is intemperate in its tone, but let's park that for 1 minute. I think it'd be quite useful to get the number of elephants there out of the room to start with, that you have been accused of misleading us. And I have to say, personally, I didn't feel misled, but nevertheless, someone has accused you of that. And specifically, in relation to what the objector is saying about their own, and I know you've covered it, but if we could be a little more explicit, that somehow by granting this application, we would stop a further development of up to 50 homes on the adjacent site. Now, I think I'm correct in saying we currently have nothing on the table. We've seen no proposal for those homes. But if it were to emerge, can you just highlight how that could potentially be a problem, even though I do recognise it's not necessarily at this stage a material planning consideration?
Yeah, so just to clarify, it is a material consideration that we have to have regard to the site context and to that site. What we're saying is that there's no detailed plans at this stage. There's no current planning application for the redevelopment of that site. Although they have engaged at high level, we don't yet know what would be an appropriate design response for that site. So it's not possible to accurately quantify what the impact would be. Yes, if this was approved, any emerging development would need to have regard to Manderson House in terms of daylight considerations and so forth. But because of the stage it's at, it's not a site allocation, we can only give it limited weight. However, we are ascribing significant weight to the benefits that this scheme before you would deliver, which, as mentioned, is an uplift in commercial floor space, a more acceptable use within the strategic site, as well as 111 homes, and 30 of which would be affordable. So I hope that clarifies.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding the applicant had been agreed to pay the further £3,500. Is this going to up and down? Is a fix this amount? Just a little bit clear of this amount.
Sorry, can you just repeat it's a bit quiet. Just
Sorry.
to elaborate on the 3,500.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
This
as
is
I
going
said,
up and down. This is a fixed amount. This one.
would be a fixed amount. That's in addition to what was already secured prior to last committee. The figure, I believe, would be 9,000. I can just go down to quote the full figure for you, just for accuracy. Just bear with. Apologies. Um, sorry. So last time we secured £15,620 and 50 pence towards the park, and now we're securing an additional 3,500. That would be a fixed amount, and that would go towards bringing forward this park that we have plans for.
Councillor Lal?
Chair, I too would like some clarification on the site to the south, Bridge House, I think it's called.
Yes.
Can you clarify if the planning authority, us, have at any stage had any contact with the site owner or the developers as to what might come on that site?
Yes. So in the objection, it's been expressed, and they've come in for pre-application advice. They've outlined that in their objection, which is at this stage quite high level, that would look at a mixed use redevelopment of that site. So industrial and residential. Again, it's very high level. There were some issues that would need to be addressed. So we don't yet know exactly what would be an appropriate response, which is why, as I've outlined, we can only give it limited weight at this stage.
So again, in relation to D3, again, legal advice is sought, mindful of the fact that we do know, it's about clearing the elephants in the room again.
Yeah.
We do know there's something going to come on that site. Is it a material planning objection?
It is a material planning objection. As I said, we know that they have intention to develop it. We don't know what would be acceptable on that site yet, so we can only give it limited weight. Whereas, as I've said, significant weight to the benefits of the scheme that is before you right now. So yes, it is a material consideration.
Sorry, go on, yeah.
If it's helpful, just to clarify, I think Jesse's answered very clearly, but just to make sure that members are absolutely clear, it is a material planning consideration, absolutely. It's about the weight that we afford to that in the planning balance. So officer's recommendation, as set out in the report, is that the weight that we've ascribed to that is limited compared to the weight that we've ascribed to other benefits that are brought from the scheme. So there's no debate around the fact that it is a material planning consideration, just to be clear on that. Going back to the previous question about the material that was circulated around a diagram around feasibility of what could potentially be delivered on the southern site. It's that material, that drawing, that we have ascribed no weight because it didn't inform our assessment and decision recommendation on the application. So I hope that clarifies, but we can do so again if it helps.
Okay, Councillor Luki.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just going back to what Councillor Sidhu raised on the reduced number of social housing, well, affordable housing, we're calling it. Now, I don't know how much of that, I don't remember exactly how much of that is so-called social housing or below market rent. How much of this might be shared ownership, which we've all gradually decided it's a racket, because when you add service charges to it, that bumps up and reduces the value of what you're getting. But in terms of assessment, has this been affected by the current economic environment? The reason they're offering this 27 is it's affected their viability. 27%. It's affected the viability of this scheme. So so there's that question, and to what extent will the committee be receiving more of these types of approaches to viability, reducing it and diluting our policy here in Hounslow of 40% in future?
Yes, it's a reflection of the current climate insofar as certain inputs are considered, such as construction costs and whatnot. So the answer is yes. And in terms of other applications, we always have to critique financial viability. So that will always be a reflection of the current market. But I couldn't speak to the impacts of all future schemes, if that makes sense.
That answers some of the question for this. So if for whatever reason, well, the developer wants to make more money on this, that's why we're reducing it. We're reducing it to 27%. So perhaps you might not know, but if anybody else, any of your colleagues know, thank you from my colleague here. 30 homes, 21 social, 9 intermediate. That's the shared ownership and that kind of stuff. But what's going to happen? We're going to be getting this, and we're going to be clamoring for. There's going to be a clamoring for housing, and we're not going to get we're not going to get what our policy says. And this is not giving us what our policy says by a long chalk, really, by a third at least. So why should we approve this with this with this very little incentive?
So yes, the strategic target is 40%, but the policy requirement is for it to go through viability testing and to provide the maximum reasonable. And this very much is what the maximum reasonable is. So it is absolutely policy compliant. We can't insist on anything above what would turn the scheme which would make it unviable. So it is policy compliant in accordance with the development plan, and that's both the local plan and the London plan. And sorry, just to jump in, there is both an early and late stage review mechanism. So if when it comes time to construction, those inputs have changed and construction costs have gone down, we would reap that benefit through additional affordable housing.
Sorry, so they can easily go the other way as well, then, can't
No,
they?
so
Oh,
it's
they can't go
no,
that way.
absolutely not. The legal agreement is worded so that housing that they're proposing now is secured regardless. It can only be amended to go up should viability support that, and that's very carefully secured in the legal agreements always.
Vincent, you want to come in?
Thanks, Charles. Jesse's already said it, but review mechanisms only work in our favour.
Thank you. Councillor Sidhu?
Yes, so viability is the developer bought the site, they come to us for planning permission. So our policy is 40%. So why we are budging, why we are not saying this is our policy, 40%, take it or leave it. So like viability it goes up and down, but why council take that dent?
Yep. So as I said, that 40%, that's a strategic target. What the policy says is that it needs to be the maximum reasonable, and we have to have regard to the viability. So that's a material consideration. It would be contrary to the development plan to insist on something that wouldn't be viable. So I know it's a strategic target, and we always try to push within the confines of viability to get that. But in this instance, it's not viable to do so. So it is very much policy compliant in so much as it is the maximum reasonable that they can deliver on site.
No, this is a big project, 111.
Yes.
So this is not a small project of 35, 40. So if our policy is not deliverable on 110 housing, how we can, this is like, why council take that dent? I don't understand. With such a big project where we are building 111, it's not 50, 60, it's 111. And this place, we don't know when the developer bought this place, and we don't know what price they paid. So how we assess the viability when like this is a big, and it's a Brentford. This is not like this is prime location, and 111 on a what at the moment there's MOT there.
No, so it's a vacant office building and
So
car
it's like,
parking.
yes, so it's a single story thing. So we are giving them 7-story building, 9, 7 and 6 and 7, and now we are saying instead of 40, 27. I think we should go back with more.
So we have, as part of the application, we've critiqued the viability that's been done by an independent surveyor. who has reviewed all of the details, including the land values, the cost paid. So all of that has been critiqued, and this has been determined to be the maximum reasonable. So essentially, it does accord with the development plan, and it wouldn't be a sustainable grounds for refusal because it is in accordance, as I said, with the development plan. So we couldn't insist on anything over what is viable on the site.
Okay, I can't see any more hands. Okay, can I now invite Mr. Grant Leggett, the objector, please? Mr. Leggett, you have 5 minutes, and we'll remind you when 30 seconds left.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. My name is Grant Leggett. I'm Executive Director and Head of Planning for Boyer London. I've got 21 years experience in planning in this country, most of which is dealing with major mixed-use developments, including development on and adjoining industrial sites. And I speak in further objection to the application on behalf of the owner and occupier of the site to the south, Bridge House. My colleague, Mr. Osborne, addressed you previously in my absence. Just to clarify, there is a detailed pre-application scheme in front of the council. I'm genuine with my experience that officers don't understand that the policy reference to surrounding context and capacity for growth includes the capacity of adjoining sites. This principle is sometimes called the borrowed light principle, and there are appeal decisions that we've shared with officers where similarly poor design, windows facing over adjoining sites, have been refused and dismissed at appeal. This is basic town planning, and it shocks me that officers don't understand it. And if they consider, and that they consider the development complies with D3, and the Greater London Authority agrees with me. Officers also misled you at the previous committee by telling you there is a first come, first served approach in planning. This is also wrong. The point of policy D3, once again, is to ensure all sites can be optimised, regardless of when or in what order they are developed. Otherwise, there'd be a gold rush of developers putting forward schemes that are selfish on land at the expense of others around them, which would not only be plainly unfair and unreasonable, but would result in housing delivery being severely curtailed. It would mean that landowners, like our client, who have not been ready to bring their sites forward because they are running businesses on them, would lose out. And that's exactly what's happening here. It's costing our client his retirement, and it is developed for any purpose. In that regard, it conflicts with policies D13 and E5 of the London Plan and should be refused. And despite what officers told you at the last committee, these policies do clearly protect the future use of industrial sites. That's policy E5D, if anyone wants to check the policy wording. We seek that you refuse it. I have here the wording of a reason for refusal I can give you if you'd like it. If you don't wish to refuse it, you could defer the application again and insist that the windows are deleted from the development. Those windows are the only source of our objection. At the previous committee, it was urged that we attempt to communicate again with the applicant. We've attempted this. We've had no response. The applicant seems determined to ignore us and continue to keep their fingers crossed that the council doesn't come to its senses and refuse what is a very badly designed development that advantages them but disadvantages everyone else, including my client and the borough of Hounslow, to the cost of 50 homes.
Thank you, Councillor Leggett. Sorry, Mr. Leggett. Okay, questions for Mr. Leggett? Yeah, Councillor Mitchell.
Hi, good evening. Was it Gareth? Sorry, I've missed your name.
Grant. Sorry.
Grant, sorry. I'll grant you that. Thank you, Grant. Yeah, optimization versus sterilisation. It sounds like a sort of something in a future world, doesn't it? Your optimization or intensification of the MP Motors site, how would you actually describe that? What would that envisage for clarity tonight for us? And if this passes in its current form, what would it look like in reality? But from your starting point.
Sure thing. Okay. Everything I'm about to tell you, officers have got detailed drawings that show all of it. But the pre-application scheme we submitted provides 100% replacement of the existing commercial on the site and 69 homes in a building up to 13 stories on the site. Okay. That development was designed also envisaging that the site to our west could come forward. So it doesn't have windows facing over that site, which is good design. The site is absolutely ready to come forward. The fact that we have submitted a pre-app, paid significant fees to architects and myself and others to bring it forward, demonstrates very clearly that it's ready to come forward. And I'm here tonight, and my client, the owner, is here tonight, who can tell you they are ready to bring it forward. Should the application tonight be approved, due to the presence of those windows and the impact that our development would have on those windows in terms of daylight, sunlight, overlooking, etc., our scheme would have to be severely cut back and reduced in height, reduced in setback distance from their building to preserve the daylight to their windows. And again, there are various assessments at play in terms of what that capacity would result in. Our own assessment is a development yielding only 14 homes. Now, a 14-home development is barely viable, frankly. And that's why I say that if this development is approved, not only is there a reduction in the number of homes on the site, it could be that it can't come forward at all. I hope that answers the question, Councillor.
Okay, any more questions? Yeah, Councillor Stroud.
Yeah, thank you for that. You seem to be from the Jam Tomorrow school, I'm afraid, which is we've got on the table in front of us 111 homes, and we've discussed the viability of the 27% affordable. You're saying that you're offering up to 50. That could be reduced if this goes ahead. And officers have been very clear that, yes, it is a material planning consideration, but it can be outweighed by the quality of the plans that are currently in front of us. We've not seen your plans. We've seen a mock-up. We've seen a diagram which has now come forward, which we didn't have last time, which is a fair point. But I'm struggling to see how you justify saying we can approve 111 new homes today on the promise that some point in the future, yet to be determined, we could have 50 homes. How do you square that circle?
Well, there's quite a lot packed in there, Councillor. First of all, and I speak only from experience and judgment, sir. It is frankly irrelevant whether we've submitted a pre-app scheme on the site. If this was a site that was just sitting there, the obligation to ensure it wasn't ruined by development next to it would exist in any event, okay? My point here is if the scheme before you were properly designed, and by properly designed, I mean it didn't have those windows that face directly over the boundary, which is patently poor design, it may mean that take those windows away, the Manderson scheme may go down from 111 to a slightly lower number, a handful fewer homes, okay? Let's say it goes down to 105, just for the sake of discussion, or 100, because it's a nice round number. Maybe it would lose 11 homes. But it would mean that our site could deliver up to 69. So the equation is that the net outcome there is 169 homes for the borough. As it stands, Manderson House delivers 111, and if you approve it tonight, it will deliver 111. But our site will only be able to deliver 14, if not 0. And if I add those numbers up very quickly, you get to a total of about 125, which means a net loss of 40-something homes, 46 homes, I believe, from the borough's housing supply. When those homes come forward, sir, with the greatest of respect, is irrelevant.
Is that materially you are correct, but when you take the planning balance into account, this is an attractive option when balanced against what we may have on my Jam Tomorrow theory. I don't know if it's appropriate for officers to comment at this stage, Chair, or not.
No, we'll come back.
Okay, thank you.
Is that okay? Yes, yeah. Okay. Luki?
You kind of touched on what I was going to ask. So you're possibly reducing, if developing yours or wanting to develop your site, you're possibly reducing the, I mean, you eventually arrived at 100 homes. Remind me how many homes we'd look at on the Bridge House site, and also out of those homes, you know, we've been sold, you know, we've been punted 27% here, 27% here. Out of those, out of the whole number that you're going to, you're promising, again, you know, not that I like aphorisms or you know, these kind of jam tomorrow. I prefer marmalade or Gligor. How many potentially here and how many potentially affordable units would we get from Bridge House? What is the intention of the owner and the developers? And when? Not jam tomorrow. When? That's the thing.
The intention is the intention, and my client is here, and he will sit here and tell you this himself if it suits you, is to go for a 100% affordable housing scheme. And at 69 homes, I was asked the question, so I will answer it if that's okay.
We're not. Members are not here to assess a scheme that doesn't exist. Yeah, it's to talk about 40% affordable housing, etc. on a site for a scheme that doesn't exist. To
Members
reflect
also need to understand the material planning
sorry,
considerations. You actually interrupted me, Mr. Walsh.
And that's my job. It's inappropriate to be discussing a scheme that doesn't exist, not in front of members. We've got a scheme in front of members, yeah, and that's what the planning merits of that scheme is what's on the table. It shouldn't take into account that the gentleman that offers 40% or 100% affordable housing on a scheme that doesn't exist. I have to say that.
Okay, I can't see any more hands. Yeah,
Hang on. I ain't finished. The amounts that this was raised in Mr. In Grant's, Mr. Leggett's presentation. So in a way, we have all heard that. And in terms of number of affordability, whether it happens or not, but we've also been told earlier in his speech, his presentation, that he doesn't know when this would happen. So this is that jam tomorrow thing, and we really want to know if your client is looking to affect any change here with the Manderson House. Why should we buy what your client is saying if he's not going to develop immediately? There's no idea. Now you cited D13, E5, and E5D. I mean, what are they, and why are they relevant here tonight? Okay. Let's go on that one.
I'll take each of those in turn, Councillor. Thank you. We've submitted the first stage pre-app. We are very keen to come back for the second stage pre-app, but while this proceeding is going on and it's uncertain whether our site can be developed at all, we haven't come back for second stage. Our client doesn't want to spend money further designing a scheme that might completely collapse if you grant us permission tonight. But I would expect that if this scheme was refused tonight, we would be straight back in to see you at next stage pre-app. We'd be looking to make a planning application within, I would expect, 4 to 6 months. That's just how long it takes. That's going as fast as you can. And assuming that was determined within, say, 6 months, they'd look to bring it forward immediately. I'll try to remember your questions, Councillor. D13.
D13, E5 and E5D.
So D13 is the agent of change principle, which in Précis says that where you have an existing noise generating use that needs to be protected by not introducing noise sensitive uses near to it, which may result in noise complaints arising. Okay. Policy E5D says that, and this is a policy specifically related to strategic industrial land, and our site is, for now, strategic industrial land. What the policy says is that particular care needs to be taken around placing noise sensitive, i.e. residential developments, near or adjacent to strategic industrial land, and that must take into account the existing and potential future uses of that industrial land, which may need to be used 24 hours a day for noisy, odor generating, stinky industrial uses. So that's those two policies, sir. There was another question, I think, but
yeah.
Oh, E5.
E5.
E5 is the main policy around strategic industrial land. It says an awful lot. I can't rehearse the whole lot, but E5D is the relevant part, which I've just set out to you now.
Thank you.
Chair, so how do these affect, how does this application, if you're quoting these, how would these affect Bridge House? What would you foresee if Bridge House was developed? Where would these come into play?
Yeah, well,
You're going round and round it, I think.
No,
but
no.
maybe you can go, work it straight.
The matters are complex, so I'll take as much time as you'll allow me. The reason I raise E5D is that, again, if this application is approved tonight, the potential for a residential development of Bridge House kind of evaporates. That's why I say it could result in the loss of 69 homes. What that means is my client is left with an industrial site that he has to try and make the best of. Now, it's to either continue the use of the industrial site as it is, or try to intensify it in line with the London Plan and every other layer of planning policy, which seeks to intensify sites where you can. The problem would be that he would be unable to intensify the industrial use because of the presence of the residential windows, because an intensified industrial use may cause noise, odour, etc., more than the existing use does. So he would again be limited in terms of what he can do by the presence of those windows. And that's why that policy is relevant. So again, you might look at it as though our primary intention is to develop for residential and mixed use. But the fallback is to continue using it for industrial, but both options are imperiled by the presence of these windows.
Thank you. Councillor Rahman.
Just want to ask quickly, so these concerns you have about the windows, were they raised to the applicant? And if so, what was the response that you got back?
Yeah, so when we first saw the application published online, we were surprised that we'd never heard about it from anybody. And this was what was interesting about that is sometime before the application was submitted, our client had tried to reach out to the landowner of the site, but no communication was ever forthcoming. When we saw the application, we objected to it immediately. I also reached out to the planning consultant, Mr. Scott. I can't remember exactly when. I think I only reached out to him directly at the time that we saw it was being recommended for approval, because what we did was we objected to it, thinking that there's no way this could be approved because it's frankly bonkers. We reached out to Ms. Rotrand, who I don't think we ever got a single reply from at all. We then saw that it was recommended for approval. I reached out to Mr. Scott directly for a discussion. We got no reply. Following the previous committee, our client reached out once again to the landowners and got no reply. And I think that pretty much sums up the record of attempted discussions.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, Councillor Todd.
Yeah, some of the people here, Mr. Leggett, had the benefit of, or including me, were here last time, so I wouldn't have heard this. But can I just?
I was watching online, Councillor, as it happens.
So I'm not making myself clear. I'm going to raise matters that came up at the previous hearing.
And I'm sorry, forgive me, I've interrupted you twice. I did see the last committee meeting online. I just wasn't here in the room.
Well, let's start again, shall we? Sorry about my cold. Yeah. You talk about, I'm going to jump around a bit. You talked about 24-hour use. My understanding, we were told quite clearly, it's an MOT service station.
Currently it is, yes.
So there's not many 24-hour MOT service stations, are there?
No, there are not, but there is nothing preventing a 24-hour use of that building at the moment. There are no planning conditions restricting that. And my point about the 24-hour use is that, let's say my client wanted to use it for a dark kitchen or some other industrial use, a small-scale logistics use, for example, that would be a 24-hour use. But that option would be taken off the table for him by these windows.
We're going down the hypothetical rather than the actual, aren't we?
But planning policy requires the local authority to go down the hypothetical. Right. That's what policy E5D says.
I didn't want to, but I'm going to go. You mentioned, you've implied the officers and misled us about an application. I think you've gone to stage 3, or is it stage 2 or 3 of a planning application?
I'm not sure what you mean, Councillor. Forgive me.
Well, you said a pre-app. You've done a pre-app.
Oh, sorry. Yes, we've done a first stage pre-application. We would envisage there being 2 pre-applications and then the planning application.
Okay. Well, you've bandied around lots of figures, which I recall your projections 59, 60, or 15. Where the other side, a lot of people thought that wasn't viable. But putting that to one side, what have you done a pre-app for?
We've done a
What's the number of flats you've allegedly applied for?
69.
69. And that's based on what? The applicant next door's windows being removed or what?
Yes.
Completely.
I'll be very frank. When we submitted our pre-app, having seen the application before you tonight, and we thought, well, okay, just to really ensure that the officers understand the importance of our site, let's go. Let's bring our site forward. Let's submit the pre-app, and we submitted it on the basis that those windows don't exist, because frankly, we did not think in a million years planning permission would be granted for them.
Well, it's recommended by officers
I know.
after serious consideration.
I understand that.
And yet you're pursuing an application, or appear to be in part of the process, use the correct word, whereby you're seeking a large number of flats based on solely that part of their site will be destroyed by windows be missing or whatever.
Well, we've stalled our pre-application discussions because...
Oh, but the windows are a key part of your success.
Taking those windows out enable us to develop our site, yes.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I can't see any more hands. Thank you, Mr. Leggett. Okay, can I now invite applicant, Mr. Kevin Scott, please? Mr. Scott, you've got 5 minutes and we'll let you know when 1 minute left, yeah?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Kevin Scott from Solve Planning, acting on behalf of the applicant. Wow, you've just heard some very dramatic claims, and I'll perhaps try and offer a little bit more rationality to some of the things that you've heard. The officer report very correctly focuses on the reasons for the application being deferred and has dealt with each of those very clearly and succinctly. I don't want to go through those again. But I do hope that that provides members with the reassurance that our scheme will not prejudice suitable development coming forward elsewhere, and particularly on the Bridge House site, which we've just heard so much about. It has always been part of our design process to make sure that this site could come forward at a similar density to that we are proposing, while still meeting the council's requirements in terms of privacy, outlook and amenity space, etc. And this follows established principles set by recent developments along Commerce Road, which have proved to be very successful. I've been fascinated to hear talk of 69 units. Just to give, you've heard a lot of numbers, let's just put that into context. That gives a density of 690 dwellings to the hectare. We're at 329. Most of the developments along Commerce Road fluctuate around 320, 340. That's the level of development that's being talked about. And suddenly that's going to come down to 14 units. Well, perhaps I suggest they have a more sensible look at the capacity of that site. It's frankly ridiculous numbers to talk about. I think if a developer were to seek a scheme of equivalent density on that site and the mix of uses that still delivers the SIL objectives, then that's entirely practical and deliverable. And both schemes would sit comfortably next to each other and the other schemes along Commerce Road. Equally importantly, and it's a point Mr. Leggett correctly makes, you need to think about future use of the site if it stays in commercial use. And we have done that. We have considered all the aspects of the agent of change principle, and the report sets out the very detailed work that's been carried out on matters such as noise. These are an integral part of the design. They haven't been forgotten, despite some of the things that have been suggested. You have seen the feasibility study we did as an exercise, and we did this as an exercise to test it for our own benefit, because it's always been part of our brief. And it's certainly not our job to design a scheme for Bridge House. And there's been quite a lot of discussion about that. The main thing is to be confident that a scheme, a reasonable scheme, an equivalent density and mix of uses can come forward. Now, we've come to that view through our own analysis. And as you've heard, your own officers have come to that view through an entirely different process, using their own skill, expertise and knowledge and experience. Reference has also been made in some of the correspondence to an application for new chimney ducts. And some of the conversations that Mr. Leggett, some part of Mr. Leggett's conversation seems to suggest that this SIL designation gives a license to pollute. Anything can happen here. It's just not the case. There is still planning and environment. The SIL has already changed with more sensitive uses and a significant proportion of residential. And all development, whether on our site or on theirs, has to be mindful of this, as well as other commercial occupiers. This is not altered by our development. Now, in the previous, when I spoke to you previously, and I don't want to go through this all again, and there's nothing worse than he said, they said, and things like that. But my client did reach out to the owners of Bridge House 19 months ago to try and engage, but these offers were not taken up. And that's fine. That's absolutely their right. But at that point, we had to make a decision that we want to bring our site forward. And so we started to work with officers through the pre-application process and to develop our scheme to do that.
1 minute, Speaker.
I'm shocked by the criticisms of the approach to officers in this application. I think completely unfounded, completely unreasonable. One of the crucial factors in shaping our proposals has been the constructive discussions with officers who've tested us at every stage and at every aspect of the scheme to make sure they've got something that they feel confident in recommending for approval. Blind affordable housing, which helps address the priority need for 4-bedroom accommodation in Brentford. It introduces SIL uses onto the site, promoting SIL objectives. It's a design which reflects the industrial heritage of the area, and it delivers public realm improvements, including a link and contribution to the potential linear park and an active frontage to Commerce Road. And I do hope that you'll be able to support the officer recommendation this evening, but I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Question for Mr. Scott? Yeah.
Colleagues have mentioned earlier about the 27% affordable housing. How do you justify that? And secondly, if you were to mitigate these controversial windows, what would your application then be? What would it look like? And would you be able to find common ground and deliver one which we could pass? Potentially. Thank you.
It's on the affordable housing. I think Jesse's covered it. This issue of the viability. It's a very rigorous exercise. It's open book, so all the numbers are there to be tested and reviewed by an independent valuer. It probably does make a huge. So we worked on reconfiguring the space. So we haven't reduced the space, but it's just obviously as you move from 1 and 2 beds to 4 beds, it's had that implication. That's why there is the review mechanism in there, that if things do change, then this is looked at again and more funding towards affordable housing will come forward. But I appreciate that it is a shortfall against the 40%, but it is trying to deliver all of these things, the commercial use, the improved SIL use, the residential, and a good mix of affordable housing and a very sort of balanced mix of units, tenure blind type uses. In terms of the impact removing those windows would have on our scheme, I think the first point, I think it's a false starting point. It's not necessary there isn't a need to reduce units on our site. This false jeopardy that's been raised by Mr. Leggett that somehow these are going to cause the whole site to be imperiled, it just doesn't stand up to scrutiny. You can develop a scheme of the equivalent density. I don't see, if we were...
Thank you, Mr. Scott.
Thank you.
Right. I'll come back to you, Jesse. Can you take a couple of questions Mr. Stroud asked you? You remember the question? No?
Well, given now we've just heard from the applicant as well, I may want to introduce those into debate because we've now got a different side, but if that's okay, Chair, when we move to debate. Okay, thank you.
Wait. Councillor Sidhu?
Thank you, Chair. Like not going to the objector, but I'm very, very concerned about 27%. We have refused these so many applications on the basis of affordable housing. So we are here as a representative of the people. So our policy is 40%. Yes, you can come down 4%, 5%. This is when you enter the Commerce Road. So this on the left-hand side, this will be the development, which is 6-story, 7-story, converting from a warehouse into a housing. So like it has to be at least like 35% affordable or 40% affordable. This is not a like regeneration of a housing into a housing. So like I know officers have done the assessment on affordability, but like we are as a councillors have a duty to look after our residents and try to bring as much as affordable for on this development.
Right. Councillor Stroud,
Yeah, coming back now to it just strikes me that notwithstanding the comments made by Councillor Siddon, and I'm probably a little bit more sanguine than he is to go with what the officers recommend, that it's been tested to the degree that 27% is the best we're going to get. But coming forward from that, we seem to be at the position where we've got two rather different stories about the same site, and we're getting led into almost a binary choice. Either we've been misled by officers, or we haven't. Either we're going to get 111 new properties with 27% affordable, or we're potentially rejecting 69, 100% affordable. And I don't want to hammer my metaphor out the park, but we've been offered jam tomorrow. Sorry, John. Also, somebody's clearly not telling us the truth, because one party is saying, yes, we reached out, we tried to consult, we got no return. The other party is saying, nothing about this. No one's ever asked us anything about it. So somebody's not being completely truthful with us. And we've got two wildly different interpretations of the same piece of planning legislation. So coming back to the point that I raised before, I think it would be really useful to the committee. I know the officers can't arbitrate on who said what to who, but once again, and I know you've done it twice already, but really hammer it home for us what the real planning considerations are. That yes, we have to be mindful of what the site may become, could become, should become, but on the planning balance, which is the key factor, can you outline that really clearly for the committee and tell us which side you recommend? I know you've already recommended, but reiterate your recommendation we should come down on.
Yes, absolutely. So just to summarize, so we have a scheme before us, which of course we need to assess on its own merits. As part of that, we have to look at the site context and the site to the south, which is Bridge House. There's a pre-app at early stage. There are still issues officers identified in regards to height and mass. So the quantum that you've been told, we can't say at this stage what will be acceptable. What we can say is there are issues about height and mass, which would indicate it would likely have to come down somewhat. We just can't quite say exactly how much, which is why we can't give it anything more than limited weight at this stage. And I just wanted to raise one other quick item. The objector mentioned that the Greater London Authority also had objection. We did reach out to the Greater London Authority, and they said that they had no comments to raise. So I just wanted to clarify that. So again, it is a material consideration, Bridge House, but the impacts on that site, given the stage it is at, we can only ascribe limited weight to, whereas significant weight is ascribed to the benefits of the scheme before you, which is of course a larger site delivering 111 homes, 30 affordable homes, as well as 2,388 square meters of commercial floor space, bringing a more appropriate use back to the site, to the strategic industrial location, and therefore on balance. And that is a matter of planning judgment. As always, the officer recommendation is for approval.
Okay, yeah, Councillor Luki.
As soon as we're bringing officers back into this again to answer some questions, we're at 27% here on affordable housing. What iteration is this? How many discussions have we had on affordable housing contribution? Is this version 5, 6, 7? Where did we start? Where are in order to get to where we are now?
Yes, so we held pre-application discussion in which the strategic target, of course, was identified as 40%. The applicant knew that, but it wasn't until the application was submitted that we saw detailed viability. So once it was submitted, we had that reviewed by our independent surveyor. and that came back as the maximum reasonable. So again, as you heard, that stood at about 30% by unit, but we then entered into negotiations with the applicant to secure much needed 4-bedroom family homes in the social rented provision, which is what the borough desperately needs. So because of that, it went down to 27%.
Can you remind us what social rent is, as opposed to compared to the rent that the council housing department rents its properties out for, please?
Yeah, so social rent would be essentially what we consider council housing at the required rent level specified in the London plan, and that would all be secured in the legal agreement.
Right, we're back into debate again, sorry. Yeah, go on.
I just wanted to underline the point that Jesse's made about the 40% affordable housing policy, that it is subject to viability. That is part of the policy. And that's the process that we've been through.
Sorry, officer, sorry. I totally understand viability. But as I say, we are at a planning committee sitting here looking after our residents. So we are the one who assess the viability. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Chair. And this is my first committee, and so if I say anything ignorant, I apologise in advance. So just to clarify my understanding, because I think it's important that I understand it, I do understand entirely that our strategic ideal is 40%, but obviously there are considerations that we have to bring into that. I understand that if it's not viable, less than 27%, then it's not viable. And I also understand the fact that we've bargained somewhat to get the 4 bedrooms, which we desperately need when you look at the huge waiting lists and the numbers of people that need houses of that size. I understand that entirely. So I think, I think I understand clearly what you say, and therefore I am sorry, but I would disagree with you, Councillor Sidhu, on that. The other thing I want to ask, and yes, so if I've got that wrong, please, the second thing I wanted to ask is if we can give some weight to the adjacent land, albeit not the exact development that the objector is talking about, because we don't know what that would be. Could you comment, is it appropriate for you to comment about whether or not the impact that the objector is saying that will come to bear on any proposed development is an accurate one, if that makes sense? So the effect to which he is saying that they will only be able to, they could have built 69, but now they can only build 14. Surely that's a consideration we could have. So could you comment, please?
Yes. So essentially, I won't be able to accurately quantify exactly what that impact is because we don't yet know exactly what form of development would be acceptable there. So, of course, you've heard that number 69. I can say officers did have certain issues with the scheme. So that's the figure they gave. But no, I wouldn't be able to give you an exact quantification of that impact, which is why we've only ascribed it limited weight.
Okay, before I take the next speaker, there was a time when I asked, can you ask the question from the officer? Nobody did. So now we are into debate. Debate, please. Councillor Todd?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, for your time. Just want to go over the history of viability and raise a couple of points, really. I remember with Councillor Lukey and elsewhere, in the old days, it was a very secret process, and we insisted it's published, and we can get access to it. So personally, there is some credibility in that transparency. Everything in finance can be manipulated, but I just want to put that to one side. I respect Councillor Sidhu's application, but I want to come on to other things, really. We've got a tangible, credible application. That an applicant who jumps around like, well, whatever. There's mention of these bogus windows. It's fascinating. We didn't hear a word from Mr. Leggett about the windows, what the damage did, what the options were. It's simply this window. Where is it? What is it? But you've got to put a smell up that there's something wrong, that the application is wrong. We hear it's an MOT station, and yet he talks in the same breath of a 24-hour operation with plant, smells, all that sort of stuff. But more fundamentally, he mentions an application he's made, so he implies officers are misleading us or something stronger. An application for a viable scheme with this huge number. And you've heard from the applicant, the capacity, the building capacity, hundreds of flats in the matchbox on a little bit of land. I mean, complete waffle. Sorry, we're being misled. That's waffle. And if you believe those figures, you must recommend it. But the final point is that he has applied, he tells us he's applied with an application in the pre-app, and he's included 69 flats. And he would only succeed with that scheme. Bear in mind, you're a planning officer, you get these papers. It's a scheme that would only succeed if you damage someone else's application. If you take the windows off or change someone else's application. That's quite unique. You know, you ask the neighbour to smash down your windows because you want a bigger extension. This is pure theatre. I have no ambiguity in saying I recommend this be pursued, quite frankly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lal, do you want to come in? You said, yeah. Right. Is somebody proposing anything? Yeah, go on. Okay, can we have a seconder for that? Okay, we got a seconder. So there's a proposal to go for officer's decision for approval, seconded. And can I have the votes on that, please, for the approval of the application? Yep. Sorry? Against? Any abstentions? One abstention. So how do they? Application has been approved. Thank you. Right. Do you want to take a short break or can we carry on? Yeah? Yeah. No, somebody wants a break. 5 minutes break. And make sure it's 5 minutes, please. Thank you, everyone. And we now into item 5, 83 Wood Lane, pages 118 to 128. And who's taking it? Ilian? Yeah, all to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So this is item number 5, which is 83 Wood Lane. The application site contains a 2-story detached dwelling on the eastern side of Wood Lane. It has an existing hip-to-gable loft conversion and a single-story rear and side extension, which are currently under construction. The application here tonight is for the erection of a first-floor rear and side extension. 7 objections were received, with main concerns regarding harm to neighboring properties in terms of loss of light, outlook, increased sense of enclosure, loss of privacy, as well as harm to the character and appearance in terms of increased overdevelopment, lack of proportionality. Both the first floor rear and side extension comply with the council's residential extension guidelines in terms of their design, scale, and positioning. And for that reason, the application is recommended for approval.
Sorry, just before that, Councillor Luke, you called this application in. Are you going to, obviously, what's the idea? He has to leave the room or? But
Well,
once it's
I don't see.
It's up to Councillor Ruki. If he has a predetermined view, then he should leave the room. But I think it's for Councillor Ruki to say the reasons he's called it in first and his views on it.
I don't make predeterminations on this. I think it's been open with the officers, with the area planning manager, and with the case officer Gillian. That we had meetings with residents. I've had meetings with the applicants. I did not make my mind up until I saw the report, and I am a good ward councillor who tries to represent his constituents. So tonight I'm just looking at this with the. I'm going to explain this. If you want my explanation for it,
of course.
I don't want to be excluded. I don't think ward councillors, just because they might call something in, they should be excluded from discussion or even participation or voting, particularly if it's potentially a non-contentious issue, if you like. I've not been to the press or publicised this in any way, shape, or form on social media.
It's up to you, Councillor Luke. If it's me, I'll leave, because I mean, it's up to you. If you're predetermined, then you have to leave. Otherwise, it's up to you anyway. You want to? I'll give you a chance in a minute to speak. Any questions for the officer? No.
Well, I mean, this does incorporate a question for the officer, a question or two for the Gesundheit, a question or two for the officers, I think we received a document from one of the objectors, the next door neighbour, when the officers met at the next door neighbour's house at number 81 Wood Lane. I was pretty much left. I pretty much did not participate in the discussion, and I think the officers would attest that. In fact, I noticed a few issues to consider, particularly the large trees, 3 large trees that were not ripped out previously as part of the development, and I hope. I've been assured by officers that they will be the subject of tree preservation orders, and I see Eamon Cassidy's nodding his head. So that's one aspect. But I brought it here because knowing the neighbourhood and knowing the area, I just want to question a couple of things. Councillors were sent a document from the residents, the lady next door at number 81. I think it was there's a gap. There is a gap between the houses, between number 83 and 81. And if it was developed, if this development was to go ahead at first floor level, then this would change the appearance. Would change the appearance of the street there, and it would create a terraced effect, and that is what concerns residents. It would concern me as someone who takes interest in this, which is in this aspect of policy is right opposite the Spring Grove conservation area. In the past, we have, I don't think we've allowed development to replace a single story lean-to, and this is what we've got here. And I just like officers to confirm that this does not really this does not meet the residential extension guidelines. And if that's not right now, but when I finish, this is planning application P5 for this address. And I think this is about the third or fourth, application within this scheme. We have had problems as well with the way that the building process has been managed with previous applications, but that's not a material issue here. But that is something that perhaps for future, and seeing as the Director of Planning is here, for future discussion is how we manage smaller extensions and developments, and how they impact on on neighbourhoods and pavements and similar. It looks like we've potentially taken a parking space out here, and one of the photographs here shows that there could be 2 cars on that frontage, and I'm not too sure what we've got on the what we've got on the potential of this new application, how many we get there. So the concern is also one of those pictures where you've got the second to last picture on the sheet here is you see that gap at first floor level, where the sun shines through, and where it allows to give light on the patio and the garden at number 81. I'd like that explained, and why we potentially would allow this extension, this development, if it's going to take out light. And I'm not too sure to what extent this has been considered as part of the reporting, the assessment. But again, officers, if officers could explain that. Look, I think this is, and I understand, and I also understand the personal circumstances of the applicants as well. But I think when you look at the application, you look at the drawings, the space that's been created, it was a large house in the first place, but the space that has been created and added to this does take away from the character of the area. And it does, I think when the officers did come down to see it, see this application, they also walked to Harewood Road, which is on the Northumberland estate, whose back gardens back onto number 83 Wood Lane. They saw they saw how vastly different, how vastly it has changed, and how it's impacted the neighbours on the other side. And again, I think that's something that we need to consider, not just tonight, but in the future, and when we're looking at our residential guidelines again. I will leave it at that. And Chair, I will not vote in this if that is a concern. But I wanted to explain. And I do understand the applicant's needs, but I think the neighbours' needs, not just immediately next door, but particularly access. I mean, whether the people at number 83 would allow the people at number 81 to be able to go up and clear their gutters, but and maintain the outside. But I don't think that there'll be any space to do that. So I think, again, this the overdevelopment. I would ask one of you to recommend either deferral, to allow a 1 metre gap or 1.5 metre gap. I think it's stated here, to change that, or to refuse it, in order to come back to that stance, if you like, to give some space, to allow the light through, to allow maintenance of the next door, because I don't think they've got an agreement to go right up against each other. There'll be a small gap of 1 or 2 inches to, and if you look at the application drawings, 1 or 2 inches to between properties, and then so we'll end up with a long terrace, 3 houses in a terrace in the future. So I'll leave it at that. But if officers could answer the questions, I might come back.
Thank you, Councillor Luki. I was going to give you a chance to speak anyway. What I mean to say is now you have actually told us to defer it or something. I think you should not take part in debate or in vote. Okay, right? Would you answer that, please?
So to start off with the first point, terracing, the council's residential extension guidelines refers to the terracing effect in relation to the front elevation and not any boundaries. So when it refers to the terracing, terracing effect would be created when the extension would be flush with the front elevation, sort of creating a new kind of front of the house, if you will, which could then, when paired with neighboring houses, potentially could result in sort of a straight front elevation or front of the house, which could then appear as a terrace row. So the residential extension guidelines recommends that instead a 1 meter setback be introduced at first floor level to reduce the terracing effect, which is what has been introduced with this application, which is what has been proposed. Again, there is no recommendations in relation to the boundary from the residential extension guidelines. This is not something that we can ask for in planning terms. We don't consider there to be any harm in regards to terracing because there is that setback from the front elevation, which makes the extension appear more proportionate to the main house, the dimensions of the main house. And in regards to maintenance of any boundary walls, any neighboring walls, any neighboring guttering, that's not a material planning consideration. That's not something that you consider within this application, which is another reason why we cannot ask for a 1.5 meter gap. I believe your next point is in regards to car parking. No parking spaces have been proposed. No increase in parking spaces have been proposed as part of this application. As far as I'm aware, the parking situation would remain as existing. Could you please repeat the last few questions that you had?
Am I allowed to speak, Chair? The gap that we removed that will prevent sunlight. What sunlight assessments have taken place and access for maintenance of the side wall at number 81. And sorry, whilst we're at it, the extent that you can remove a front wall there, or can we keep? Will there be any conditions to keep the front wall at number 83, so that you don't open we don't open up the streetscape there?
To start off with your last point, this application is solely for the erection of a first floor rear and side extension. We don't have any alterations to boundary treatment as part of this proposal. In terms of the sunlight to neighboring properties, that has been assessed. There has not been a formal daylight sunlight assessment provided with this application, which is not standard for householder applications. The size and scale of the proposal is not considered to result in harm to the sunlight to neighboring properties. The first floor side extension would not project beyond the rear elevation of 81 Wood Lane. And the first floor rear extension would have a depth of 2.5 meters and would be set in from the boundary by at least 2 meters, which is compliant with the council's residential extension guidelines. And due to its size, scale, and positioning, neither element would be considered to result in unacceptable loss of light to the rear garden or rear windows of number 81 Wood Lane.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Lal?
Thanks for that. When I read this report, the issue that concerned me most was the privacy and the loss of light aspect. And as I mentioned earlier on, that I had a representation by email from the residents at 83. And looking at those images, it's quite clear that perhaps there is some element of overbearing, excessive development on adjacent to their property, and will have an impact in terms of loss of light and privacy. So I heard your rebuttal of that to a certain extent, that you feel that it's not a material planning issue because you think it's minor or not relevant, or you haven't done an assessment, or clarify on that.
I'm sorry, what are you referring to?
Privacy, loss of light, overbearing.
So this application, which is the first floor side and rear extension, again, as I just stated, due to the size and positioning of the extensions, would not result in any unacceptable loss of light or overbearing to either neighboring properties. Again, in terms of privacy, there are no new side-facing windows introduced, and the kind of existing situation at first floor level would be replicated, and that's not considered to result in unacceptable loss of privacy.
And it's normal that you don't do a sunlight assessment in these cases.
Formal daylight and sunlight assessments are not common in household or planning applications.
Right, any more questions? No? Okay, it's open for debate. Anybody, anything? Yeah?
I mean, we've had just a, and thanks to Councillor Luque, we've had a very comprehensive run through of the objections. Two of them are, which the officers very kindly addressed, are actually a matter of what the regulations say in terms of the gap and whether it meets council regulations. And I think they've adequately been addressed by the officer, and we've been told they are both compliant with planning policy and the council's policy. The others are have been addressed, the terracing effect, which once again the officers addressed and said, no, there isn't a terracing effect. And then the others are in that area of planning policy, which drifts a little into the subjective as to whether or not you're losing light and whether it's massing. But that once again has been addressed. So, and some of the other objections, such as there'll be a removal of a tree. No, we're told there are no trees being removed. So looking through this, and I sympathetic, obviously, as always, to objectors and also sympathetic to the applicant. From my point of view, I think the officers addressed adequately and comprehensively every one of the objection points. So thank you very much, officer. And I don't know whether any other members can think of any other objections which are not contained in the document.
I can't see any more hands. Yeah, Councillor Mitchell. Yeah.
Yeah, side windows on the extension overlooking. Is that, can you just clarify that point, please, for me?
Yep, so this application, there are no side-facing windows proposed, and a condition would be added if permission is granted, which would prevent the addition of any side-facing windows without a planning application being made.
Right. Any more? Anybody proposing anything? Officer recommendation is approval. Anybody proposing anything? Yep. You're seconding it? It's been proposed, seconded. I'll take a vote. Officer's recommendation is approval. Vote for that. It's unanimous?
No.
No?
No, there's two members missing.
Okay, okay. Okay.
Councillor Luke is not voting.
Yeah, it's not voting. Yeah. Anybody against? Abstentions? One abstention. So it's been approved. Thank you. Next item is Falcon House, Staines Road, and that is from pages 129 to 154. And who's taking it? Ahmad, yeah? Okay. All yours.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. We're talking about Falcon House, which is on the corner of Staines Road and Hospital Road, a vacant 5-story office building located just outside of the town centre boundary in a highly accessible location with a public transport accessibility level 6A. The proposal is to convert the building into a 97-bedroom hotel with associated conference, dining and gymnasium facilities. As part of the application, the applicant demonstrated to the council satisfaction that the loss of office and proposed development would not prejudice the vitality and viability of the town centre. In terms of the design and appearance, there are minimal external changes as an additional area of soft landscaping, an increased number of PV panels on the roof, as well as air source heat pumps. In terms of the impact with neighbours, there's one adjoining residential building, which is Quest House, You can just kind of see it on the red outline there. The relationship there is as existing. There are no windows on either development overlooking each other. The environmental concerns of the proposal have been addressed via condition in terms of transport on highways. The office had 72 car parking spaces, which have gone down to 10, 6 of which are for disabled persons, and all parking spots have access to an EV charging point. There's also a policy compliant quantum of parking on the ground floor. To the rear of the site at present, there's a footpath which is quite narrow, and as part of the application, we've agreed with the applicant to increase the width of the footpath and remove obstacles such as the bollards there at present, and to convert the access to a dropped curb. This means a portion of the land in the tree, a street tree which is there and retained, will be adopted. And the proposal also includes a financial contribution to public realm and active transport. Please also refer to the addendum, which includes 2 additional conditions, and this is a verbal addendum. We are proposing a minor wording change to condition 4. Ultimately, in conclusion, we recommend the proposed development for approval subject to legal agreement, the conditions attached to the scheme, the addendum conditions, and the minor wording changing to condition 4.
Thank you. Questions for the officer, Councillor Mitchell?
Chair, is there a speaker for the applicant or not on this? Okay. Just 2 observations then. This hotel, what would the target audience be, given the loss of car parking spaces, etc.? And as per London policy E10, business and leisure, we're very keen, especially down at our end, but across the borough, that good jobs for local people. So in management jobs within any business and something like this, it's not just the service jobs that Hounslow residents are asked in to do. Is there something there that we can actually impress upon the builder that we would like to see? The better jobs there, local people considered for that and employed in those jobs because we have the skills and talents. Thank you.
With regards to your question about the target market, the aim of the applicant, as stated in the design and access statement, is for a 4-star hotel in that location. And with regards to your second question, we have agreed as part of the Section 106 heads of terms, a contribution to training for local people.
Any more questions, Councillor? Yeah, Councillor Foote, go on.
Yeah, forget about this.
Construction
I'm old
training.
school. Yeah, the training that you've mentioned, I mean, is it aimed at managerial staff or is it not mentioned?
No, it's aimed at construction training. So there's no management training. It's for
when you say construction training, once the building's finished, then that disappears.
Yes.
Okay.
Councillor Sidhu?
Thank you, officer. How long this office building is emptied for?
The building's been vacant for quite a while. In terms of the exact number, I'm not sure, but the applicant engaged in a marketing exercise where they advertised sections of the office, the entire office, for a period of time greater than a year, which is as required for in our policies, without any takers.
Thank you.
Any more? Yeah, Councillor Lucas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ali. This is a good idea, and I do think we should go beyond the construction training here. If we've got a 4-star hotel, well, they say it's going to be a 4-star hotel. I hope that's what it does become. But if it's going to be a 4-star hotel, we need training beyond construction training. We need to tie in training. We've got one of the best hotel catering establishments situated in our borough. The catering school is in Ealing, but University of West London delivers hospitality management. I think I'd like something in there on that kind of training, something a Section 106 to tie them into that, whoever the applicant is. The other thing is there's no good shining up the outside. The number of times I reported Falcon House and the landscaping at Falcon House, it grown over the pavement and inhibited. I've bumped into Councillor Ghazala Butt there a little while back before she was a councillor, and we saw the mess there. And lately they've been fixing it up, and they put Heras fencing there. But we do need a commitment that they're going to improve the environment there. We need a commitment that they're going to put a stake in the service road behind there between them and Aldi at the back there, and also the rear access to Quest House. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I don't know who else is monitoring this, but I do look at these things, and that lets a borough down. So if you're able to get that in there, and we need some conditions there, I need officers to propose these conditions. Is that Jeff there? Is that you're looking younger, mate. If we can. You're not doing an identity kit, are you? All right. We do need you to come up with that, and subject to agreement with the chair later on. But we need some better landscaping, improved landscape. I like the fact that they put the Heras up there. It keeps the alkies out. But there's also, if we are looking at this, and if anyone's going to come and stay at that hotel, whatever it is, they've not got a very good view there. Is that Cromwell Road or Hibernia Road? Opposite. Sorry, Hibernia Road. The state of the old Lord Palmerston, for example. Oh. Yeah, no, exactly. I think they've still got some of the old regulars locked up in there. Yeah. But that is a building. I know the owners have probably got some ambition there, but that is a building that needs fixing. That needs, the whole environment around there. If they're gonna land a hotel in that corner there, we do need an improvement. We need good improvement, whether it's Section 106 or whether it's SIL, but preferably Section 106 on that corner there of Hospital Road and Staines Road and Hibernia Road, overlooking the old Williams Dye Works. We really do need to look at more than just this application, which I hope. Is this fella involved in it? I don't know, but I hope he's taking notes and he's involved. But we need a whole area approach here. And if this is going to be an anchor building, I'm surprised we didn't really do that when Aldi pitched up, or when Lidl sought to change their change the use there from the old Halfords. So you're going to come back to us. Tell us what you think now, officers. And I hope my colleagues agree with us here, because it's a state. The whole area there, the neighbourhood there is a state, and a lot of people come down there. They'll go to Aldi, they go to Home Bargains, they'll go to Lidl, they go to the Heart of Hounslow Health Centre. We really do need some. They go to Il Bibo, Quality Foods. We do need a good, Asian food store. I hope this is being recorded. We'll get some donations. But if we can look at that and tell us what's possible now, and if we can agree those conditions, I hope my colleagues here will agree.
I'm sure, Tony, the officer will come back to you on that one.
I don't know if you're sure. No, they'll come back to us now. Yeah, good.
They are.
As Ahmed mentioned, we will be obtaining a active travel contribution from the developer, and we've established a fee of £75,000. That figure has come from a senior engineer in the transport department, and that's based on the active travel zone survey that they've provided as part of the application. And it's outlined 4 main areas for improvement. I can outline those to you if you wish, but essentially that money can be spent in any way that we see fit, should the other measures not come forward.
Such as?
So as part of the active travel zone survey, they have outlined the north side of Staines Road beside the MOT centre. There is a confusing area for pedestrians there with difficulty crossing on the footway. That's an area that's outlined for improvement. The north side of Bath Road, there's also a very cluttered footway and a possibility to declutter and improve walkability. Third one is then the Steve Biko Way Junction, improvements to the crossing facilities, such as the removal of the guardrails as well. So these are all things that they've outlined, and we've calculated a possible, we've secured the contribution fee towards, and that we can spend that money on to improve the area which people will be walking to and from the site from.
All right, next. I don't mean next speaker. Next, that's a good idea. That's a good contribution. But when we consider where the place is and where the people will be coming from, they'll be either turning up in a coach, or they'll be coming from Hounslow Central Station. And that only covers that bit there. So how, if they're going down to Bath, using Bath Road to get to Hounslow Central Station, what about the other stuff? What about the training stuff? And possibly adding to this £75,000, because that's probably not enough to cover all that. It is a state. We all know that.
Councillor Lukey, in response to your question about training, so in line with our planning obligations, we could expand the construction training to include some end user training and some job brokerage, prioritizing local people in this development.
In what though? In what trades, and how are we going to get a kind of guaranteed level 3, level 4 HCMI type of training and good chef training in local people, because that's what we're short of. We are short of good catering staff, local people, since we started to commit slow suicide in 2016.
Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, so we through the Section 106, we can seek contributions or secure contributions to construction training, which has already been talked about. In addition to that, job brokerage for the end occupiers, so it's the actual jobs in the hotel, yeah, and end user training as well. So it's training for those people that will be working within the hotel. So it's not just on the construction jobs. It's in the end user training and employment brokerage. The way that's delivered is either through the council's own employment training team and the contracts that they have, or directly delivered by the applicant. And that's obviously subject to the Section 106 negotiation, how that's actually delivered.
All right, Councillor Foot.
Chair, sorry, just one more on. All right, okay.
Yeah,
there was a long list, and I like to talk. But what about the space behind? What about the space behind the hotel and Aldi? The mess the constant mess there. Is it? Would they contribute to? Would the applicants potentially contribute to adoption, so that it is better maintained?
I mean, we can't negotiate the Section 106 within the planning committee meeting. So it's good to hear the issues that are of concern to members, and of course we can pick that up with the applicant in terms of the Section 106 negotiation. But precisely what we can secure from them through that, can't agree here.
I haven't mentioned any amounts, Director of Planning. All right. So if you can come back to us one way or another. I have an interest in this. Ward Council might have an interest, but the chair would as well, representing the committee and the vice chair.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Councillor Foot.
Sorry. Yeah, pick up on the training, and I really, we talking about to what level, and I think it's important that we underline managerial level training. We're not talking about lower level jobs. We're talking about senior jobs on the site there, and that's what I would like to add in there as an sorry,
long term.
Well, I mean, if they're training them and putting them in there, I expect them to be in there long term. I can't do anything about that, but I mean.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Akram.
I just want to know, there is a 4-star hotel, as you said, is 97 bedroom. Is it a double bed, single bed, or is a family bedrooms? Is including the family bedrooms, or the single bedroom is? Are you talking about the 97?
There's a variety of unit types in terms of single person families in line with many hotels and 4-star end users.
Okay. Okay, just a minute. Anybody else? Any questions? Okay, Councillor Luki.
Just a guarantee that this is going to be a 4-star hotel. It's not going to be a flop house. You know, they get the permission, and do they change it to a 2-star or a 1-star or Councillor Akram's right. You know, what is it going to be? Can we hold them to a 4-star?
So the application is for the hotel use, not for it being 4-star. So as officers indicated, what they've indicated, it's a 4-star hotel, but the application itself is for the hotel use.
Shall I move this then, Chair? If that's okay, I might as well do something positive tonight. If subject to conditions, if I'm allowed to actually, legal advisor, subject to the conditions that will be potential conditions that we've discussed, and subject to Section 106 agreement.
But we're coming to debate now. You can
All right,
you can
okay,
actually
well,
ask the conditions and
yeah.
Okay, right. I can't see any more questions. So into debate, Councillor Luki. Now you can ask the section.
I've asked it. I can't remember what I said. Yeah.
Sure, officers have made a note of that. Councillor Luki mentioned that he need to add some conditions there for the back of the hotel. Is it and the side where Oldie is?
Immediate environment of the hotel and its relationship to neighbouring buildings. We're looking, if officers have got the expertise, whether it's done through a Section 278 or whatever, but an improvement to the environment there. I'll go down there with you. I don't know when's the last time anyone's gone down there. I'll go down there with you and show you what the mess is. So it's about environment. It's about the training, construction, and catering training. We expect a gourmet restaurant there, don't we, Councillor Sidhu? But it's the including that active travel thing, which I think 75 grand is pretty lame, to be honest. If you can up that, that'll be better.
Most of those points are covered in the existing conditions, but we'll make sure that they are.
Okay, it's still in debate. Go on.
Yeah, just to reiterate the point on managerial jobs, the higher standard of jobs within the organisation, every part of what you've discussed, we'd like to see there, not just the construction, but the long-term viability of the hotel. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So because the property was empty from last over 1 year, and because that's why it's probably mess around there, so I proposed approval.
Can we have a seconder for that? Okay, Councillor Croft. Okay, it's been proposed and seconded for approval. Can I take a vote on that, please? That's unanimous. Nobody against, no abstentions, so it's been approved. Now, last one is Park Road. This application is not a planning application. Who's going to take this one? Can you? Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Yeah. Can you explain that to the members, please, and then we can take that.
On the basis of my original declaration, is it okay for me to stay?
Yeah, it's not a. You know,
okay,
yeah,
I understand.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure I'm.
It's not in the same
watertight, is it?
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, all yours, Eamon.
Good evening, councillors. This item is slightly different to the ones you've heard already this evening, but I will try and take you through it. So it's item number 7 on the agenda, Park Road allotments. The application that sits behind this item was originally heard at Planning Committee on the 14th of October 2021, and the decision was taken to refuse planning permission. That application was for the erection of 80 residential dwellings, a concierge building, car and cycle parking, landscaping and associated works. and infrastructure and other structures associated with the allotment use. Following the refusal at Planning Committee in 2021, the applicant has submitted an appeal to the Planning Inspectorate on the 19th of April 2022, which will be heard at public inquiry, and that's scheduled for the 2nd to the 4th of August this year. So the item before you is just for officers are seeking delegated authority to enter into a Section 106 agreement. That's because the Planning Inspectorate requires the local planning authority and the appellant to draft a legal agreement before the public inquiry takes place. In the event that the inspector decides to overturn the council's decision, allow the appeal and grant planning permission. So again, members are not being asked to revisit the planning application or make a decision on the original planning application itself. Instead, members are being asked to delegate authority to officers to enter into a legal agreement to secure the necessary planning obligations should the inspector grant the appeal.
So all the members happy with that? Yeah, go on, Councillor Luki.
Much as we, I think, much as officers, I think, understand this application, this second application, despite the recommendation that it be approved at committee, and we refused it. Can we add that this recommendation, officers are given the authority in consultation with ward councillors. I think there's a lot of local stakeholders there and ward councillors understand this a lot better. I'd even say in consultation with ward councillors and the area forum chair, but I'll pass on that. But with ward councillors, because I think we need. I think this is such an important application, an important appeal that we do. If it does come down to it, I think there's a lot of issues a lot of local issues that the councillors know more about than that can add to what the officers know. If we're allowed to do that, I think we're allowed to do that because we're the committee. But if colleagues would support that too.
Sorry, we were just talking because what you're requesting is consultation on Section 106 agreement and the contents of the Section 106 agreement. We were discussing the practicalities of how one would do that, given how Section 106 agreements are negotiated, which is a legal, negotiation and process and quite complex. So it's thinking about how how ward members would best be involved in that process. I haven't got an issue with the concept of it. It's working out the practicalities of how that would work.
Yeah. Well, there's phone calls, there's emails, there's meetings. I think there's an approach prior to. There's a couple of. I know there's one ward member here, who's on the committee. They're easy to get hold of, but there's another two who are not here. And one of them has seriously got a large stake in it. So there's ways of, without actually them actually saying yes, do this, but a lot, they're giving you the guidance and seeking any extra opinion to what your what you might eventually. Hopefully, it's not it won't be necessary. Kick it out. The inspector will kick it out. Like we should have done before, but that's a way of doing it. If you don't mind me saying, if you want a bit of politics in it.
Okay. Yeah. We will be able to work something out, I'm sure.
I'm glad. Thank you very much.
Okay, so are we all agreed on that? Agreed? Thank you for that. Okay. Okay.
Just to be clear,
Yeah,
agree-
sorry.
Are you agreeing
Yeah, you-
delegation on that?
Yeah, delegation,
sorry,
yeah.
just to be clear,
So what we're
that's
doing
an
is,
important point.
I'll tell you what we're doing is, planning committee to seek authority for officers to negotiate and enter into legal agreement to come into force if the appeal is allowed. And the condition, what you mentioned.
Yeah, I'd like it. I'd like that minuted, and I trust the officers to adhere to that, seeing as everybody's approved that.
Thank you. So it's all agreed, yeah? Thank you. And the next is, I have not been told of any other business. And, sorry, yes, addendum. Where is, I've seen that. Addendum report. Has everybody seen that? Okay, there's nothing in it. Okay. No. Yeah, we have to cover. Yes, fine. Item 10 is the next meeting is going to be on 13th of July, 2013. With that, I close the meeting. Thank you. Thank you for your attendance.